You are welcome to the session 2 of Unit 3. Here we shall continue our discussion on the concept of demand, and we will focus our attention on the factors affecting demand. Do you remember our Latin phrase, ceteris paribus, which meant all things being? Alright, we hope you have not forgotten it. In this session, we shall find out what these ceteris paribus conditions or these other things are and further explain how they affect demand. By the end of the session, we believe that we should be able to mention at least 5 factors that affect demand. Be able to mention at least 5 factors that affect demand. You should be able to explain the relationship between each of these factors in A above, and you should be able to distinguish between inferior and normal good, and you should be able to distinguish between substitute and complement goods. Alright, so let's get started. Now, demand depends upon two sets of factors. Demand depends basically on two sets of factors. We have those factors that have to be held constant, that is ceteris paribus conditions, and price of the commodity. The factors that have to be held constant determine the state of demand, and they include income of consumers, price of related goods, consumers' taste, and expectations of consumers. The law of demand, or maybe you may want me to write what I said down. I said that the factors that have to be held constant determine the state of demand, and they include the income of the consumers, the prices of the goods, related goods. We have the consumer's taste, or we say preferences, taste, consumer's taste, and we have the expectation. All right. So the law of demand can fully be stated as giving individuals income, prices of related goods, his taste and steady state of expectations about future prices and availability of goods. The amount of the good that such an individual will buy at any point in time varies inversely with the price. Inversely means a negative relationship. It varies inversely with the price of the good. Alright. One thing we have to know that demand is also affected by distribution of income, total population, and its composition. It's also influenced by wealth, sometimes credit availability, and stocks. Let's look at the effect of income on consumer demand. We also look at the effect of price on related goods on the demand. We look at consumers' preferences, look at expectations of consumers on the demand. Alright. Now, since demand involves expenditure of money, the first important determinant of the level of demand is the income of the consumer. Now, an increase in the income increases the ability of the consumer to demand more goods for consumption. Assuming you earn 23,500 Ghana cedis per month. The moment we increase and we are able to at least stay on some course of expenditure. The moment we increase this to say 4,000 Ghana cedis, you realize that we'll be able to demand more things. Alright. That's what we are talking about. An increase in income increases the ability of the consumer to demand more goods for consumption. The higher the income of consumer, the higher the level of consumption expenditure, the greater the amount of any good that he can buy at any given price. That is the influence or the effect of income on consumer demand. Let's look at that of prices of now, goods may be related either by substitute or complement. Don't worry if you don't understand what we mean by substitute or complement, we'll explain. The housewife will easily buy mutton of beef if not available or its price is relatively higher. Now, consumers are fairly indifferent between tea and coffee or between omnibus and trotro. The common characteristics of these goods, like I made mention tea and coffee. These goods I'm talking about tea and coffee. How do you spell coffee? I think it's double F, alright. Tea and coffee, or you see the trotro and omnibus. Alright. The common characteristics of these two are that if the price of one should rise relative to other, consumers will easily switch their demand to the other. Such goods are called substitutes. Another example is, let's say, Pepsi and Coca-Cola. They seem to have some similar taste. So instead of people consuming Coca-Cola, when the moment the price of Coca-Cola is way above that of Pepsi, people will now substitute Coca-Cola for what? Pepsi. That's what we are talking about. Now, technically, we say two goods are substitute even when the price of one falls relative to the other. Consumers will buy more of it and less of the other. So, like the Coca-Cola and the Pepsi. If the price of Pepsi falls, people will buy more of what? Pepsi, and then less of the what? Coca-Cola. That is what we are trying to say. That's what we are trying to say. When there is an increase in let's say the price, the one may also decrease, and then people will also switch to the other. Now let's talk about the complements. Two goods are complement if the price of one and the quantity demanded for the other are inversely related. They are inversely related. What do we mean by that? When one of the commodities, the price rises, the other's the demand for the other will go low, and it's vice versa. The examples of complement goods are pen and ink, let's say tobacco and pipe, car and petrol. And these goods are normally jointly consumed. Generally speaking, goods are to some extent rivals to any particular one good, since they are all competing for the same income of the company. As all goods are competitive, even though they serve different purposes. That you should have in your mind. Alright. Let's look at consumers' taste and preferences, or consumer taste or say preferences, likes or dislike, and how that influences the. Now, taste refers to likes and dislikes of a consumer. For instance, cows are not eaten for food in India, but in Ghana, beef is scarce and the price per kilo is very high. Cultural traditions also determine taste. Now, a favorable change, sorry, not a condition, favorable change in consumers' taste or preferences for a product as a change that makes the product more desirable means that more of it will be demanded at each price. Demand will increase for situation where there is a favorable change. An unfavorable change in consumer preferences will decrease demand. When the changes are not favorable, the consumer tends to decrease it. And then new products sometimes also affect consumers' taste. For example, the introduction of computers greatly decreased the demand for what? Typewriters. You see, the new product has brought in the different tastes, and it has brought in, because of the different taste, there is decrease in one demand and increase in another demand. Let's talk about expectations. Expectations about future prices. The focus is on future prices, and supply can be volatile. When we say something is volatile, it means they can change, and they can change. So it can go up, can come down, can go up like something like this. You see, that's what we call volatile. Now, for example, a housewife is likely to buy more than her weekly needs if she suspects an impending shortage. So, if she expects that maybe in some weeks to come there is going to be shortage of tomato, the person may buy more tomato now and store against tomorrow. Now, changes in consumer expectations may change demand for a commodity. Changes in consumer expectations. Your expectation may change demand for commodity. So now people may say, okay, now the dollar is say around 12 cedis, 30 pesos. So people may say, okay, now, okay, let's wait when it may come down. So people will not buy dollar, they want to wait till it comes to say 10 cedis. Then when it comes to 10 cedis, we will go and buy and speculate or expect that it will go up again. So you see, that is going to affect the demand. That's what we are talking about. And a newly formed expectation of higher future prices may cause consumers to buy now. So we are assuming that maybe in the future the prices of banana may go up, but now the prices are low. So what will you do? You go and buy more of the banana now in order to avoid the anticipated price rises. Thus, it increases the current demand. It increases the current demand. On the contrary, a newly formed expectation of falling prices or falling income may decrease current demand for products. So when we know that the price of say iPhone 14 will come to say 5,000 Ghana cedis, you wouldn't go and buy the iPhone now. You would wait until the price comes down. So it would now the demand for the iPhone 14 will decrease, but when the time comes and the price falls, you see the demand will what? Rise. It will rise. So similarly, a change in expectations related to future price products availability may affect current demand. Finally, a change in expectations concerning future income may prompt consumers to also change their current spending. Will change their current spending. This brings us to the end of this session, and we shall meet in session 3, which will talk about change in demand versus change in quantity demanded. Change in demand and change in quantity demanded. It is going to be an interesting time, so don't miss it for any other agenda. See you then.